What's going on, all you Gundam Gooners? It's your boy D, Riggedy Wreck here with ARGO, covering the newest update that just came earlier this afternoon from the English version of the Gundam Card Game, covering the newest ban list and restriction list that's going to be dropping later this month on the 24th for its official go-live date. If you haven't seen it yet, I did post a short earlier this afternoon with screenshots of the big three announcements. So, going right into it, just right off rip here, the first thing is going to be Anksha is banned. Apparently a 3-3 ping needed to be banned hard, and it is banned. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why. Level 4, 2 cost, 3-3 stat line that pings on rest. It's basically the same function as a gun tank, but for a 2 cost as opposed to a 1 cost, and on turn 4 instead of on turn 2. But it is banned, so less ping for 1 Year War and Blurple. Speaking of Blurple, the second big thing on the list is Amuro and Mika choice restriction. I think I talked about this in my last video where I was anticipating what that ban would be, and it ended up just being Corsica limit to 2. And in that video, I had explicitly talked about a choice restriction between pilots. Had I have it my way, it probably would have been something along the lines of Amuro, Mika, Hiro, Kira, and maybe Char in the mix there, just because of all of the meta decks that have been since set 1, with especially now Wing on the horizon. We can see a lot of that being a much more prominently played deck style all over again, especially back when we saw at the beginning of GDO 1 going all the way through GDO 2, where we had green-white Wing blocker just being dominant, Amuro, and pretty much any deck that played blue. It was just insanely dominant. So by choice restricting those, I would have thought that it would have freed up a lot more deck building variety and utility out of pilots, out of the mainline sets that we don't really see too much of right now. I think the big one that we see right now mostly is Victory Gundam with Uso, and then newer version of Ride with the Banshee Norn. But beyond that, it's kind of hard to see. I guess a little bit of Red CB with the Hallelujah, but you take a lot of the stuff from the starter deck, whether that's the regular green Alleluia and then also the Lock-on Stratos along with Setsuna. You have those cards that you play in those decks as well from the starter decks, not so much the main sets. So I would have thought that I would have seen more from Bandai in that regard to push more people towards building out of just the sets, or maybe not just the sets, but also incorporated with the starter deck. So there's a bit of a balance in deck building. But nonetheless, it's just Mika and Amuro that are choice restricted this time around. We also have a second choice restriction for the gun tank and its new clone coming out of GDO 5. So less ping opportunity for blue, which I think is perfectly reasonable. I don't think that we need a ton of ping, especially when we already banned a card that does ping. Having that as a choice restriction is nice. It mitigates the amount of just easy cheapo burn that you can throw out and slow down the rush a little bit of weenies on the board, which leads into my next point and the big point for everybody, which is going to be a change of rules in deck building for vanilla 2/2s. That's the big and final ban from this time around that we're going to be seeing. And that's going to be the largest one, unfortunately, for all you 1 Year War, maybe not so much, but also Blurple players. And any of you guys out there with the Rogue 28 weenie decks that are playing like red purple or red green with like the Buku and stuff, y'all are no more of that. You don't get to do any more of that. As of July 24th, you are only allowed to play 4 vanilla 2/2s, and they have to be of the same card. For example, and I'll put the screen up on here, if you play gyms, you have to play 4 gyms. You can't play 2 gyms and 2 Zaku 2s, or 2 gyms and 2 Grays Customs. You cannot do that. You have to play 4 of that weenie and that weenie only. So for Rush, a lot of those Rush decks are dead, unfortunately, for all of you Rush players. Not sorry for you. Sorry. Not a big fan of the Rush. Had to deal with Whirlpool for the last 2 sets, 1 Year War for the last 3. Weenie Hut General just needed to not be a thing anymore. So happy to see that ban's in place, and going forward there will be some more deck building that comes out of this game. Now, my caveat to that is that before Rush was a really big thing, blockers were a huge thing, which slowed the game down tremendously, especially mirror matches. So We'll see how the meta transpires going into set 5 with respect to blockers and any decks that really play slow, for a lack of better words. Or decks that play very control heavy with like burn, anything that incorporates removal, stuff like that. Maybe that doesn't really classify itself as control, but removal, essentially. Removal, stuff that just slows the game state down to a halt and then stalls. We'll see how that pans out with these restrictions coming into the mix here. But that is it for this update here. If you guys have any comments about these changes, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. Looking forward to your thoughts about what you're looking forward to deck building going forward. I'll be sharing some of my deck lists as well going forward, seeing what you guys post in there, and then getting a little experimenting as the time goes on, as we get closer to GDO5 and beyond. But until the next video, guys, take care.